Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really cool guest today. Her name is Jenna Matlin, and I'm really honored to have her join me today because she's an author to a book that was super helpful in my early starting getting into tarot event days. So thank you so much for being here today, Jenna.
Thank you so much for having me. This is just a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you.
I'm super honored, and it's a pleasure for me too. So yeah, I just want to give a little bit. Usually from here, I will definitely in a moment, turn to introduce you and hear your backstory and everything else. But I just wanted to preface a little bit with my listeners why I'm like extra excited about this interview, because when I first started my business, I had a friend of mine who kept telling me, "Oh my gosh, you need to do events," and I was like, "No, I'm good." like, I just I was a single parent and I just didn't see it possible to do events. I don't know. I had all these reasons and excuses why not. And then my friend for her daughter's 30th birthday called me up and she's like, "Hey, would you like to be, her entertainment for our party?" So she basically was like really introducing and pushing me into it, but letting me experience it first. And so I did, and it was fun. It got me kind of thinking maybe, and I put myself out there. And we're in the same tarot group, which I think is so cool. That's how we got to connect. And when I posted, like, "I'm thinking about doing events, what do I need to know?" And like, that was the first thing that came up in the comments was read this book, which is Have Tarot Will Party. And Jenna is the author of this wonderful book. So it was just like, I turned to it for everything, making my contract, figuring out how to talk to customers, figuring out how to do the job, because even though I was a reader, it's a little different when you're sitting in front of multiple people. And so, yes, I'm just so grateful and such a wonderful experience to read the book, use the book, and then get to meet you and get to introduce you. And
It goes both ways. I mean, when I wrote this book, I've written 3. I'll trot them out early so people know. So my first one was a little slender guy called Have Tarot Will Travel, which was about bootstrapping your way into your tarot chops, like at the very beginning, using like low-end festival work. And then Have Tarot Will Party was the guide to kind of level up from there. And then in 22 of November, this one was published by Llewellyn, Will You Give Me a Reading? Which is about for people that read for others, or how to read for others from a place of great integrity and like sitting in your ethics and your values. So this book is also about getting to the place of fluency. So to your story and why it's so wonderful for me to meet you is there was nothing like these books when I started. And let me tell you, you don't make money off of self-publishing books unless it's probably some hot erotica or something. I don't know. I wrote this so that people who are readers would never feel like I felt when I was starting out and I didn't really have experience working in these different ways. And also, I was being taken advantage of a lot. Like I was like exhausted. There's a particular story that this book came out of. I was asked to go to a party. I didn't have the complete info, and it was in a huge block of apartments. This is right before smartphones. That's how long I've been doing this, like right before the smartphone thing. And all I had was like your old school flip phone, and I could text. I'm texting. I'm not hearing anything. I'm like wandering around for half an hour. And I'm just like, I'm just gonna go. So I drove half an hour to the place, half an hour back, and they called me like a half an hour later, wanting me to then also come back again. And I said no. And you cannot believe the hell that ensued after that. And I just felt so alone and so like vulnerable. And I felt like I didn't have anywhere to turn. So I never wanted anyone to feel the way I felt. So based off of that and like all of my like learning it all the really hard way, but also seeing that readers were getting taken advantage of because they didn't have a lot of business sense. And, and it's funny because the zeitgeist is, as a tarot reader, I'm going to be the con artist. But I can tell you the opposite occurred a lot, or attempts to do it a lot. And just being on the groups and seeing people being really like harmed or upset. So I really wanted to create something as a love letter to other tarot professionals, because I also believe that if you just stay online in online spaces, if you're just doing emailed readings or recording readings or whatever, you're never going to be, never, and I will die on this hill. You will never be as good of a reader as if you get the F out there and actually read for people one after the other. Like one night of that is equal to a year of the other one. I will die on that hill. I don't care who disagrees with me. And I think you would too, right? Because now you've been on the other side. You're like, my chops been passed. So for me to have someone come to me and say, "Hey, be on my podcast," like someone, like I get emotional. Like that means I did the right thing. And like I was able to help you and so many other people. And that was why I did it. So thank you for having me on, and thank you for completing the circle, as it were. It means a lot to me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember you put that story in the book and I just felt for you. But I also loved the boundaries that you set for yourself that day and teaching those of us that were reading it. Because when I came into this work, before I did the events,
Mhm.
just from what I was reading from, other books, but mainly from the tarot group that we were in, I was learning a lot about readers getting taken advantage of. So that
Mhm.
was kind of the things that I came in with this idea, I'm not giving free readings. And I was really like, unless they were like personal friends or family or something, but I was not going to give out free readings. And I was always, and granted, I charged ridiculously low when I started, but I was not doing it for free, even though, and I'd have people sometimes show up and they were begging me like, oh my gosh, everything
Mhm.
terrible is happening. You have to read for me. And I just was like, no, because I had learned from other people's mistakes and their, in
Yep.
the group. And so for your book, it was just kind of adding to that when I was able
Mhm.
to doing the bigger events and working with, parties and corporate places. It really put me in that position of, no, I'm worthy of not getting taken advantage of. And I think that because of this book and because of a lot of what you shared, I really have been able to avoid that. I haven't been in a position where I felt like I was taken advantage of yet.
Mhm.
I did it
Good.
was a really small thing. I did an event recently. But it was a second party for another party that I did. But they did kind of they kept asking me to take a couple more people on. And so I should have
Mhm.
probably, but I said yes. And they said, oh, we'll take care of you. And they really, you know, they did pay me for what I would have charged for that extra bit, but they gave it to me as a tip. And that kind of felt a little icky.
Oh,
But
yeah.
my fault. I didn't, and I think it was because it trickled. It wasn't like I had a line. It was like, okay, take this last person. Oh, can you take this last person? And then by the 30 minutes later, I was like, I should have charged $50 for this. And I got that in a tip, but
But then that means you didn't get a tip.
right. Yeah. But you know what? I've been doing this now for a little over 2 years. The fact that I've only had this happen once and I can totally see how it was on me, you know what I mean? I can
Mhm.
still say thank you so much because your book had really helped me be firm about that stuff in the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, I think what you said is so important, and I think, that was a real need identified in our community early on. Was a lot of people who are readers are very compassionate, healer, empathetic people that often have codependence and people-pleasing tendencies, like as a type, you know? So, like what I saw was people having a lot of anguish and really trying their best and getting burnt out because they didn't have good boundaries. And so I think in general, everyone really benefits from boundaries work, because it's not just about this is where I stop or where you stop. It's about these are the agreements in the relationship, and we're stating them very overtly and we're agreeing, right? So then if we step out of bounds, we have this contract in place that then protects both me and you, it protects both of us. Because people, there are some people out there that no matter where they go or what they do, they're always going to push the boundary. It's how they have been raised. People that are always trying to get a deal no matter what, like, they're always like, but this apple's bruised. Can you give me 10 cents off? Like, people just try to get away with stuff, and that's fine. But when we have a contract, we have it all set out, we can say no without it costing us any more emotional energy. We won't feel guilty about it or like, oh God, is that okay? Right. Also, the other thing too is readers are typically female. And I think there is a gender difference to how labor is perceived. Like when you look at teachers, right? Mostly women, they pay for all like out of pocket for their classroom stuff. What? Or like nurses, like there's a sense that women's traditional work is not viewed as the same kind of value. And reading is definitely part of that. And we see that in a culture. It was like, oh, you should never charge for your gifts. Never, ever. Don't ever do that. Or a lot of readers that are maybe stay-at-home moms, and then they read part-time and it's kind of ad hoc. So when we professionalize what we do, we're protecting everyone and then coming from a place of correctness that I'm both a really good reader, but I'm really good because I've created these boundaries that allow me to be good within them. So I know I had a lot to say about that, but I think that particular issue with readers in general, is around boundaries and feeling okay with them, and feeling okay with stating them. And it's not rude. It's not rude to say, these are the agreements I can make. Can you agree to those agreements?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I thankfully had been doing boundary work before I stepped into reading professionally. So I
Mhm.
think that's why it's a little bit easier for me to take this advice and have those boundaries in place, and then read your book and have those boundaries
Yeah.
in place. But it's still like, as you said, I mean, I'm definitely a recovering people pleaser. And I say recovering because I think it's going to be with me my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just have to keep it in, you have to keep it in check. You got to be like, wait a minute, what am I doing here?
And I can definitely see how, I mean, just from personal experience and knowing other readers, we're empathetic. That's how we feel what we feel. That's how we're
Yeah.
so connected with spirit and everything. It's because we're open and we're empathetic. So of course, unfortunately, that does draw those that want to take advantage. And oh my gosh, with the point with the women and our roles, I mean, that's a huge thing as well. Because especially when we think about, and as you were speaking about that, I was thinking about male readers, and they conduct themselves very correctly, very like, not correctly, but it's business. And
They
I
don't,
think
yeah, and they don't nearly get people challenging them like they will us. So if they're like, this is how I operate, people are like, okay. But if it's a woman, they're like, but could you like give me like, right? Like, so our empathy and compassion become weaponized
yeah,
against us because they see an in, and it is gender, definitely.
yeah, yep. I was just having this conversation with my partner the other day, because he was just like, well, are women really fighting for the rights? And I was like, oh, do not get me on that soapbox.
Oh, I'll be like, here's a list of books, my darling. Time to educate yourself. Yeah.
He's very emotionally intelligent, and
Mhm.
I never feel like unequal with him, but I don't think he sees the bigger picture.
Well, yeah, he is the default entity in our world. Male
Yeah,
is the default in our society. So that brings with it a level of privilege that's invisible to them. In the same way, me being white brings with it, no matter how conscious I try to be, because I've not lived in that body, another body, I don't know that experience. So I'm always open to being educated by other people, especially my privilege.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I normally start my podcast off differently, so listeners are probably like, "Ooh, this is totally a different setup."
Sorry, I have that way about disrupting things. So.
Now I'm just going to come back to what I normally would ask you. And so I know that you're an author and you're a reader, and that's really cool. But how did you find this work? Is really what I'd love to hear, is your backstory. I mean, like, was your upbringing very open to this sort of thing, or did you find it later on? Did you always know you had this gift? I would just love to hear where you started.
Yeah. So A common question I'm often asked is, when did you realize you're a psychic? And it's the wrong question for me. The right question would be, when did you realize that other people were not? Because I've always had the capacity to read people at a deeper level and understand people and sense things from as early as I can remember. And I truly believe that we gravitate towards the things we have natural talents in, right? So just like a kid who's very naturally musically oriented is going to find his way to a musical instrument probably, or an athletic kid is going to find their way to a football. Same with intuitives, we find our ways to the tools that allow us to engage in that intuition more. So I learned reading palms when I was like, I want to say 11 actually, 11 or 12, 11. Yeah, I was in sixth grade when I started doing it a lot. And I'd be reading for my friends and their parents. And what they didn't know was I wasn't really reading the lines. I was reading the lines a little bit, but it was between the lines. So that went on for a while. And then when and I can tell you the exact date. It was right after my birthday. I'm a Gemini. So if that's not apparent by now, Sun Gemini Leo rising, right? So OJ Simpson was running in his Bronco and I was watching it on TV with my birthday party friends. That's the exact date. I can look it up. It's like can't remember, like 1990. And on my street and around the corner lived two different houses of men who moonlighted as drag queens. And so this was in California in the 90s, and they really befriended me and took them in. And I cherished, and I still cherish those relationships. One of them, he drove by my house and dropped off my first tarot deck for my birthday. And I said I wanted one, but like $40 was like an impossible amount at that age and at that time. And I had memorized all base meanings within 6 weeks. Like I was in it. I was in it. I was like, I want to do this. And then they had that October a Victor Victoria party and they went all out. It was like a graveyard with like fog machines in the front yard. And they were like, do you want to come read tarot? And I was like, yeah. So here I was reading for all these adults. And I was there for like 5 hours in a corner just reading. And they didn't pay me anything. But I think what was unique about it was I was young enough to not be super self-conscious, right? Because I didn't really have enough wisdom to understand the power of the words I was conveying. I was just so excited about the reading. And I was hooked from there. So from that point on until I went full time in 2012, I was always doing little gigs here and there on the side and for friends. So that's kind of my story. That's the start of it.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So were your parents very open to you reading and were they, because that's one thing I learned a lot about those, in our work. It's like either you have parents that are very open and supportive, or you have the ones that are like, oh my gosh, get that way, we're gonna burn that, or you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like on your end, were they very open and supportive with your gifts?
I think my mom was neutral. I think my whole family knows that I'm pretty psychic. I mean, they've seen it happen over and over again, so that's not a surprise. But my stepfather was not open, but he wasn't open to anything, so I just avoided him and did whatever I wanted to do. So so that it wasn't really that big of a deal. And I, living in California in the 90s, it was very liberal time, I think, and I just wasn't really worried what other people had to say about it, to be honest.
That's amazing. I wish my story was like as direct, it's like it was meant to find you. And I think it was probably for me as well. I found it through in high school. It was basically when I renounced my faith and started questioning everything, and tarot just was so magical and called to me. And it wasn't really till about 7 or 8 years ago that I saw how medicinal it was, and the
Yeah.
guy before that, I think I just saw it as entertainment. It was like, oh, this is fun, but I didn't like, I don't know, I didn't see the value in it as much. And then I started using it, like really using it for myself about 7, 8 years ago. And it was just, I could see how helpful it was for me and how consistent it was and all of that. And then I found my spirituality about 4 years ago. So I'm very new at the professional realm. I found my spirituality 4 years ago, started my business 3 years ago, and was called into it. It was definitely, I was looking for my purpose and I kept hearing tarot, tarot. And I said, I can't do that. No. And it just kept coming until I finally said yes. And then it just like what you were saying, when you read for people, it's hard to explain, but it's like you get to see the story, the thread in it, and then you see them receive it and see them take and do something with it. And it's magical.
It's very magical. Yeah. It's an interesting thing because tarot has a basis in Catholic mysticism and Catholic um, archetypes out of the 1400s. So I always say to people who say that, yeah, but if this was of the devil, why would the devil be painted as a bad guy if he made the deck? Number one. Number two, why is judgment the literal image of people being raptured to heaven? And that, like, come on. Like, so, and then they'll go, okay, well, what about the divination aspect? Okay, but also in the Bible, you have, what is it called? Uman and Thummim. You've got the two stones, that's divination. There's a lot of divination in the Old Testament. But did you sell your daughter for a goat? Like, are we just going to pick and choose what we believe? Do you know? Like, and then it becomes like, do we want to break it down? But to your point, I think what's different about you and I is if you were raised in an Abrahamic high control religion, there is a process of having to deprogram very, very deep belief sets. And that really takes a long time, and that can be quite challenging.
Yes, for sure. I still have remnants of that inside of me, even though I am found my beliefs, I found my spirituality. I've seen tarot work over and over and over again and have had many magical moments with it where I know I'm making a big difference. And still, if someone comes at me wagging their finger at me, like, oh my gosh, this is bad. This is, well, I guess I have an example. The other night I go to this meeting called Trajectory, and it's just a really cool meeting for entrepreneurs that, are getting their business out there. It's kind of like networking, but kind of more than that. And so there's one woman who was just talking about how she's just trying to find herself. Like, she left this business behind. She's been looking for herself for like 6 months. And I just started this new project that I haven't launched it yet, but it's taking tarot, but making it more tangible. And so it's a whole thing, but I'm still offering it to people. So that way I can get feedback before I officially launch it as a new service. And so I went up to her and I said, I would love to offer this to you if you're interested. And it was the first time in a while that I got this response. She's like, oh my gosh. She said, but I came up from a really Christian family, and my own father, who passed away, who ended up coming up in the meeting, so I already had known about him. She's like, he was like very, very Christian, and he would have not wanted me to do that. And I feel like I would be praying him if I said yes to it. And I love that you're one to fortune tell for me, but I've had so many feelings that came up from that. I felt like, first of all, I felt super uncomfortable. Like I was putting something on her that I wasn't. I was actually offering a really cool thing that eventually it's going to be over $100 worth of a value. You know what I mean? It was like, I know what the value is of it, but she kind of made me, I don't know. It just felt really, icky. Like I did something wrong, even though I know I didn't. And I explained to her, I said, well, what I do personally isn't fortune telling. It's more, I like to call this a higher self roadmap, where you kind of get guidance to help you get where you want to go, instead of like just where you're headed. And I just mentioned, because of your soul searching, I just thought this would be a really great experience for you. And I did see some kind of gears turning. She's like, oh, okay, well, if you can be here next week, we'll talk then. And but man, I'm still sitting with that feeling of like, I did something wrong, even though I know I didn't. Yeah. So the old paradigm, the old teachings that I grew up with, the programming, unfortunately, it's still buried underneath there, but I'm slowly like removing.
Yeah, and it comes from both sides. It's like tarot has a PR problem. And that PR problem is because tarot has been repeatedly co-opted. In the modern world, it was co-opted by people writing TV shows or movies where they needed the fortune teller plot device. And so, yes, you're right. Most people have a very ignorant, for lack of a better word, understanding of what tarot is. But then there's all those tarot con artists out there that are leaning into that trope to make that monies, right? So you have that. So you're kind of boxed in on three angles. You have the Christian, typically, oh no, that's evil, I don't know. And then you have the scientist type that are like, that's bullshit, it's new age bullshit, whatever, that's not real, that sucks, that's stupid, you guys are dumb, right? And then you have the people that are like, you're all con artists, and they don't differentiate between them. So it is unfortunate in many ways that we really struggle to get the word out. And all I can say to that is, I think there is in every tarot professional's journey at some point, usually within the first few years, there is that point, which is, how comfortable am I with going big, going live, everyone in my regular life doing it? Because I know people that are surgeons. I know people that are like DAs. I know judges. I know people that have very, very big titles with big social cred read tarot. I know scientists in laboratories read tarot, but it's all low key. They hide it because they know that it will not work well for them. So when we decide that we leave whatever it was that we were doing in our lives until we came here, there is this social cred, like fall from grace, for lack of a better word, or this idea that if you're a tarot reader, it's because you don't have other skills and you're not educated and yada, 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 all of that stuff. But I'm like, I have, a graduate degree. I speak another language. Like, I don't do this because I have lack of options. I'm not sitting in my, you know, in my home just waiting for people to knock on my kitchen back window. Again, there's that gendered history too that comes into it. So that was another reason why I made these books, was the more that we professionalize and have a higher standard of practice for ourselves and for each other, the more the tide is going to rise. And I can tell you, it's actually shifted far more than I thought it would if I had been asked to look at this in 2012. It's really, really shifted very, very quickly. There's a lot more acceptance of it. And the generational differences are very apparent too. So the more of us that act with integrity, are professional, we have our ethics, the less we're going to encounter that overall moving forward, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. That was the first time I dealt with it in a while. So I think that's why it brought up a lot of ghosts for me. But yeah, no, everything that you're saying, it's the more we put it out there, the more we're just upfront with it. And I'm like right there with you. The moment I started reading, I found myself. It was the first time that I was like, this is me. Like every other job, I always felt like I didn't really fit in, or I wasn't that good, or I don't know. I just didn't feel like I belonged. I
Yeah.
started this and it's like, this is it. This is, and
Mhm.
I do feel like I'm supposed to be doing more than just tarot, but I feel like tarot is definitely like the love. It's my tool. It's the thing that opens me up.
Yeah.
And and I love what you're saying too about seeing the change. That was actually going to be a question I wanted to ask you, because so I'm new to the spiritual community. I'm new to this idea of raising consciousness. So, but I hear that a lot. Like this is the time the consciousness is raising. More people are being open to tarot and other modalities and healing and all this stuff. And I'm seeing it, especially, I mean, no, I'm new. I didn't see it in 2012 because I was still in the old paradigm and definitely didn't see things the way that I do now. But yeah, it's definitely evolving. And while I do see a lot of people still avoid me, like when I do farmers markets, I love cracking up because people will avoid me like the plague sometimes. Like they do this look and then they like go big around my booth.
Yeah.
I laugh at it now because I'm like, yeah, they're not my people, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
you know what I mean? It just cracks me up. But then I go to events and there's a line out the door.
Mhm.
So the curiosity is there. And I love being able to change minds at people's events. I feel like that's what I'm there for. I know I'm there to give readings and do individual readings for each person, but mostly I love the fact that they're learning something new about tarot.
Absolutely. And you're doing really important work. It's like, if we just stay in our silos and we're not engaging with the larger picture, then we're not, there could be people out there whom they just kind of do need you to be at that table And it's like not us, right? It's not me, it's not you, it's tarot. Like we are just faithful messengers. And so to watch magic happen and watch someone completely shift their worldview within 10 minutes because of what you've done with them and for them. I mean, there isn't a better drug in the world as far as I'm concerned. It's completely fulfilling and deeply gratifying to be a humble witness to that process, because it's not about me. And I mean, not to like, oh, my third book, but kind of my third book, like, will you give me a reading, is about that. Because in those Facebook groups, I was hearing people that were professional readers saying things I thought were very problematic. Like, when I would ask questions like, how do you know the difference between what's coming through the reading or just your bias or your opinion? And some of the people would be like, well, whatever comes through is just what comes through and it's all spirit. And I'm like, no, that is dangerous. When you have people saying there's no difference between someone who's been reading for 10 years versus someone who's really gifted and they just open their deck. Absolutely, there is. We don't have a professional practice of best practices to inform our work. And that's why the book came up. So not only are we reading for others, but how do we continually step out of the way and not jump to conclusions or like bring our own triggers into it or bring our own biases into it, right? And that's harder said than done, it really is.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that is actually something that I do feel like is one of my gifts, is being able to remove my ego. Because when I read for people, and it's definitely been trial and error, because there are times where I get super triggered by a reading.
Mhm.
But I have to like, it's like if someone comes to me and they're sharing things about, for instance, their relationship, and I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like you should leave them. But the cards are not necessarily saying that. I'm like, okay. But then, you know what? It's not my place. There's something there for them to learn. There's something there for them to take from it. And so that thankfully doesn't happen too often. But, I've definitely had to, in the beginning, really check myself, because there are times where I want to give my own advice versus what was coming through.
Yep.
Probably the last 1 to 2 years. And this is probably when I started realizing that I have that channel. Like I'm a channel, and I'm still trying to figure out what that means. But for me now, I don't even try to really figure it out when I pull out the cards. I don't, because there are times now where I'll look at it and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. But I just start talking. And it is kind of like whatever comes through me, but it's hard to explain. I don't have to I don't rationalize it. But I guess that's the difference. Is I don't try to figure it out. I just, and sometimes the cards will change on me. That's first few times that happened that really freaked me out. I'm like, why is that coming through differently for me?
I see. Uh-huh. Yep.
Like, whoa, that's not how I normally read that, but that's what's coming to me. And so the first time I had a battle with that too, because I'm like, wait, I'm not being like I'm not talking in integrity if I'm saying a different meaning to this card than I normally would. And then I finally was like, wait, no, that's my intuition. That's something else coming through me. I have to trust it. Because when I would trust it, it would make sense to the person.
Yep.
So it's the trial and error, but I 100% believe that in order to be have integrity with and have ethical standards with your readings, is you can't judge it. You can't try and make sense of it. And the more I've just kind of surrendered to this idea of what's on the table and what I'm feeling, it's hard to explain, but I remove my ego. For myself, not so much. When I read for others, it's like really easy for me to just plug in and pick up what I'm getting. When I read for myself, no, not so much.
Yeah, like to your point, that's also a big part in the last book I wrote, which is a tarot reading is not objective. It is a manipulation. Every tarot reading is a manipulation from the universe, as if it were like the ghost of Christmas future from Scrooge, right? So Scrooge, right? He sleeps, and then the final ghost comes. He's like, looks like death, and he's like, follow me. And Scrooge is like, okay, this, like, the last two are all right, And then they go to his future where he's in a grave and no one came to his funeral, no one gave any Fs, you know? And then the Ghost of Christmas Future takes him back and he falls back asleep. And the next morning he becomes a changed man. So the question then that begs the question, doesn't it? Was that the objective future? Is that still going to happen, that no one's going to come to his funeral? Or because of that future that he saw, it changed his ways and therefore changed the future. That's every single reading we do. It's not like a train on the track where this future is already set in stone, right? And it's being revealed. It's more like the universe is talking about your future in such a way to manipulate you, to either get you to do something or not do something, to realize something or not realize something. And then the way the reading does it, right? So I know when you've read, like, for example, right, we can say, yeah, he's not coming back, right? Dude is not seriously not coming back, right? There are gentle ways the readings can say that. It can just be like 8 of Cups and 6 of Swords, like, it's time to move on, my darling. It's very, very gentle. And then sometimes he's not coming back, or like 10 of Swords, Death, right? Tower. So what's the difference between these two? Why are they different, even though they're essentially saying the same thing, right? You're with me, right? So those differences are the manipulation. It's the volume and the tone. So the gentle, more gentle, like, darling, you've got to like buck up. And, you know, it's because that's what that person needed. And then the other person would have completely ignored everything you said unless it was not brimstone and fire level 10 volume. And that's what I mean. It's a manipulation and we can see it. So when we are faithful channels, to use your word, we're also taking the volume and the tone in our interpretation along with the information.
Yep, exactly. And I love that I love your example of the Ghost of Christmas Future, because I think that's a great way to explain how tarot works. Because the way that I explain it is, well, first of all, I'll be really upfront that I don't do predictive readings. I will tell you energetically where you're headed as of right now. That's how I like to put it.
That's predictive, though. That is predictive as well.
Yes, but I mean, like, I don't want it to be like, the way that I do it is it's not set in stone. I think
Yes.
that's the
No
way that I.
prediction is. Very
Mhm.
few are. Yeah. So then you do predictions, because a prediction is a prediction.
Right.
Prediction is a probability curve, right? So I'm like, I am a glorified meteorologist. I am like Hurricane Randy Schwartz, probably, or something, where I'm like, okay, according to our models, there's this where the hurricane will probably land in here. Oh shit, it just changed. Now it's over here. That's anyone who says they can do otherwise has got like some snake oil to sell you. That's all that we do. So I think a lot of people that say I don't do predictive, you are doing predictive, because that's what predictive really means. Because, right, there are multiple futures happening all at the same time. It's not just one. You're not a train on the track. But why did the universe choose that one future out of the multitude of futures to present to the client? If we are readers, who's the writer? That's always the question I'm thinking of, because I know
Yeah.
it isn't me. I'm not smart enough for what comes out of my mouth. I'm not. I'm not. I am not. But I see over, how long has it been? What, 12, 13 years of reading full time? Probably 20,000 readings at this point. There is definitely something else going on. There is a
Yeah.
shadow moving across the water. There is a presence, and it's uniformly interested in our goodness, and it's good. And you know that, and I know that. So to come back to that question that you said earlier, or you were talking earlier, like, wait a minute. So this person is saying like crazy things about this relationship, but the breeding is very gentle. That's work for you, reader, to be like, why was it gentle for her? Why did it tell her this gently? Possibly because she wasn't ready and couldn't handle anything more. That the universe knew that the process of coming to her truth has to happen in these very small steps. And so that's a technique as a reader, like, okay, I see what the cards are saying and I see how it's saying it. But why is it saying it this way? What can I surmise about that? Oh, if she doesn't get the gentle touch, she may depersonalize, she may like disassociate, you know? And so there's so much more going on than we as just the messengers are being made aware of. So again, it's about the ghost of Christmas future. What is going to get this person to change? And sometimes it's very gentle over time.
Yeah.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely, it's so funny when like cards like the devil or the tower or death or, those ones that come in, I know I'm like, this is going to be, and I'm always like, this is going to be a little heavy. I'm just going to be super upfront with you before we begin. It's going to be heavy. And I like how you're speaking to how you present it, how you say it, because that is super important as a reader. Like, for instance, I don't ever tell anyone what to do. I don't speak in black and whites. I like to say this is the invitation, because it's not like you have to do this or this is what's going to happen. This is what you're being invited into because these are the things holding you back, or this is the thing, this is how it's affecting you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's important to have that tact and be able to be gentle with it, with all the readings, but definitely for ones that you're like, oh, okay, this one's going to hurt. I can feel it. But when it lands in a good way, that it's what they needed. You know what I mean?
Sometimes it lands in a bad way and they're like, F that reader. You know how many times someone has probably said that about me as I walked out? F that reader. And I'm just like, and then guess who emails me a year later going, thank you. If you didn't clobber me with that, this would have kept going. And you were right. So as people that are healers, that's another bias we have to watch out for, which is the bias to never make them upset. That's a bias. That's your ego getting in the way, isn't it? If you're like, well, I always want to be gentle and like healing. Of course I do. I don't want to upset people, but I'm not writing the message. I'm just the reader of the message.
Yeah.
And we can do it with as much tact, but still sometimes it's like direct, right? And we're like, we can just be like, darling, there is no other way that I can cut this, like it is emphatically saying this to you, right? So and that's a very common bias I see writers. I'm not saying that you do, but like if readers are like, oh, I just can't, like I can't give bad news, or I get really upset if they're upset. That's our codependence, and that will get in the way of us being a clear channel.
Yeah, so I like to say I don't edit, I don't sugarcoat. So I will share what's coming through, even if I don't want to, even if I feel terrible about hearing.
Right.
And there have been plenty of times that I can tell that they are not happy with it.
Sure.
Thankfully, I haven't gotten the FU. You know what I mean? I've gotten the, I can sense it from them that they're not happy with what I shared with them. But yeah, see that thankfully I haven't gotten it. But
yeah, it's just their reaction, of course. I mean, I've been like that when I've been on the other side. I'm like, what do you mean? Right? Like it's just a reaction. And when we have good boundaries, we could kind of sidestep that and not let that get to our hearts. The only place I do feel like I have any control is when it's clear someone wants to know something, like, is he going to come back? And if they hear anything except yes, they're gonna like have to commit themselves. Like if you get that energy, like they're just shaking or like they're not stable, I will not read the reading. I will not do the reading because they're not in a place to receive it. And I also am really careful, to your point around like the predictive yes or no, that when we're asking yes or no questions, that's usually coming from a place of either trauma or anxiety.
Mhm.
Like, will I ever meet somebody ever? And I'm like that one person and I didn't work out. Does that mean I never get another soulmate? And to me, the way I interact with spirit or the source, there's no one and done. There's no one and done. It's infinitely regenerative, infinitely creative. But our choices may make it either that we're going to fulfill that prophecy of lack for ourselves, or we're going to flow into the growth spaces to allow a new spring to occur in our lives.
Yes, to all of that. I think that's why I like to give that this is the invitation, because it's all choice. And it's what I really feel like my passion and my purpose is through tarot is to empower those that I'm sitting with. 9 times out of 10, they walk away saying, I already knew the answer to that.
Oh, yes, of course.
And,
Yeah.
it's them that, yeah, you do know the answer. It's not, you don't need me. I mean, yes, I'm the one that's going to give you that clarity because you need that third person. And then of course the woo, because when I know things that I shouldn't know, it kind of makes it a little more easy to grab onto. But it's like this, you already know the answer to this. So I love reminding them that they have so much power in them that they don't even know that they have. And like for the people down with me who say, will I ever meet anyone, what will come up is usually these are the things you need to heal. These are the things that are holding you back, and that may or may not land. Sometimes they're like, oh, so I'm not going to. Like I've gotten that before. They're like, so I'm not going to meet anyone.
Right.
And I'm like,
Well, that's that scarcity, that's that anxiety, which is like, I am demanding a black and white answer where I don't really have any part to play. It's just happening to me. But I'm not growing. And I'm like, your relationship with the universe, it's co-creative. You guys are dancing in a waltz together, and sometimes you're leading and sometimes the universe is leading, but you're not a passenger in your life. But for some people, the call to change is so scary that they'd rather just kind of externalize their power to, well, it just wasn't meant to be. And I'm like, what do you mean it wasn't meant to be? But look at what you're doing that's causing it not to be.
yeah,
I feel as a reader, I have become, I don't want to say wise, like, oh, I'm so wise. Like, I don't mean it that way, but from watching all the ways that the universe tries to get people to be their best selves or their most evolved selves or to work through their karma, it's helped me tremendously as a human being on this planet, in this incarnation. And to see how I stop myself, and it's not always like immediate, and I think that's the gift of tarot too, is when it can corroborate that intuition, and that's a lot of people, but also to show us where our blind spots are.
I will tell you that as I do readings for people, 9 times out of 10, there's something in there for me too. There's that, oh yeah, that's for me. Ooh, I felt that one. It wasn't for me, but it was for me. I wanted to ask you, so, because you've been doing tarot for what, 30 years altogether, probably, but as far as professionally, you've been doing it for a very long time. How has it evolved for you? How has tarot evolved? How have you evolved as a person reading for tarot? And I know you mentioned you feel like you've become more wise, but yeah, like what have you noticed that's shifting for you since you started to now?
Do you mean professionally in terms of like my services, or like personally in terms of my own growth?
I guess you could take it both directions. I was referring more to personal growth, but I mean, if there's a difference in business too, I mean, I'm very new in my business, so I could, take that too.
It's hard work. You don't see a lot of full-time readers like slaying for long term, because it's a lot of emotional labor, and if you're not careful, you can really burn out. So I think it's good to have tarot, but maybe other modalities, so you're not leaning so heavily into just one, I would say. It's hard work, especially in America professionally, because I don't get paid vacation. I don't get paid sick. I don't get my matching 401k. I don't do you know what I mean? It's a very complicated and a very different economic scale. So when people like, why do you charge so much or whatever? I'm like, let me sit down and show you the economics of this. And that there is this slender margin between how many hours I have in me a week, where I'm really bringing my best self without getting tired or having to check any bias or check any triggers, and what I need to make a living. Those can be very slender, and people don't understand that, our economics as self-employed people is very different than Walmart or wherever else. So this is why boundaries are so important. This is why when anyone books with me, I charge half the price of my session if they cancel or no show within 24 hours. Absolutely. And if they're new to me, they have to pay the deposit up front. There's no I go easy, because what they don't understand is once that hour is gone and I can't necessarily fill it right away, then that's a loss for me that I don't get back, because essentially we're being paid for our time, not a product. And so we have to keep that in mind. So the better and the higher your boundaries are around this, the longer you can do this work without burning out, and the longer that you can make a living without burning out, and being able to communicate why to those who may not understand. So I think that's a big professional thing. Also, having different, like doing different modalities to shift things. Like I started offering mediumship and tarot and mediumship about 2 years ago as an offering. And it's such a beautiful difference, because it doesn't usually come with anxiety. Like a lot of tarot clients come because they're worried about something. There's something that has outside of events. Events can be a little different, but when people are coming to you, right, they usually often have a reason. They may not express it to us, but it will come up. And so there is a pressure there. But when it comes to mediumship, nah, it's just love. It's always just love. And it's beautiful to witness that. So I like having that. I do tunings. I've recently gotten my certification in psychedelic guiding. Can't talk too much about that, but so, but it's all kind of together. It's not like cut apart. And it's just different ways to continue to work for the light as much as I can, and be honest when I can't, because that's human. We're human. So that's some of it. Personally, well, I got out of a marriage that wasn't working very fast, because I saw client after client after client hanging around forever and nothing never changing. And so that's one of the many ways that I've learned from other people's mistakes and the readings. So that was a long answer, but I was trying to hit all the points that you've mentioned.
Well, that was all really, really great advice. I mean, especially as a newer reader professionally. Like I said, I've been doing it for 3 years. I'm nowhere near full time. Would love to be though. And, so hearing like how the different things that you do to ensure that, you're getting paid. But yeah, that's super great advice. And then I love the different modalities you shared. I feel like I'm being pushed in that direction by spirit. Like right now it's just tarot. But
yeah, I'm sensing that in you. I'm sensing that in you as well.
Well, thank you for the confirmation. Yeah, I've been told by several different people that I'm a medium. It's not something that I've fully tapped into. I definitely had moments of channeling during readings where I'll suddenly hear words, and that's a newer thing that I'm still trying to like navigate, because I can't explain it. It just pops in my head out of the blue, and I don't know how to just tap into that. It just happens. So
I think just doing it more and more, it'll happen, and trusting it. Like I think what you said at the very beginning of our talk, which was like, like I read a card in a new way, and like the tarot teacher in me is like, yes, yes. It's not a formula where it's just like insert keyword equals your reading. That's a very formulaic, and it keeps you in left brain thinking, which is logical, concise. But intuition is somewhere else, and it will bring you information that you can't determine where it came from. That is intuition. And then you have the psychic piece, and that's that. And then you have the gut piece, and that's that. So it was really at year 3 for me of full-time reading, where I really got some really huge insights about some of the stuff I've been sharing. And people that are in the tarot community, they've been in tarot for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So that there's always, just when you think like there's nothing else to learn, I've totally like plumbed this depth. There's nothing. It's always when the floor breaks and then you fall through another level of meaning with tarot. And that's why putting the years in gets you there in a way that you cannot yet discern when you are the apprentice or the journeyman. And a lot of it is very ineffable. A lot of it is hard to define. It's more of a body sense. It's more of a somatic feel to the reading, where it's a state of flow and you're not cognitive about it. You're not overthinking it. You're not like, bah, 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 oh, I don't know. It's really this place that you can shift into. And that's where the magic happens, where you pop off and say some stuff that, that how would you know that? And that's what they'll say. They may not tell you. They'll just say, how do you know that? Right. And that's when you know you've done it.
Every single reading, I get that at some point, and then it's so funny because then I get uncomfortable. I'm still learning how to fully like be in my power, but also be like, it's not me, it's spirit. Because it is. I think it is spirit. I'm the channel. But then I have to also give myself some credit because
But it's also you.
Yeah.
You're working at it. Like both sides are working at it, Yeah, totally. Don't give it all away. Like some of it's you too.
And that's the part I think that I'm stepping into, because when I said that I feel like spirit's pushing me to do more. My previous business name was Journey Through Tarot. And very recent, when I started a podcast recent, so in January, it was my first true download. It was like I did automatic writing by accident. I had all these thoughts in my head and I felt like it was like something was surging through me. So I just grabbed my laptop and started typing just to get it out of my head. And it went from third person, it went from first person, like I'm feeling this, and to third person, something telling me. And it was telling me, you need to change your business name because it's keeping you in a box. You're not a tarot reader. You're more than that.
What?
Okay.
Wait a minute. Not more than that. Like that's pretty tippity top. I think that it means like you can branch out. Like I'm like, wait a minute, more than that. As a tarot reader, that's just my ego. I'm just teasing.
I think what it was I had been feeling this for a while. Like I need to do more. I need to do more. And it wasn't like you're just, it was basically saying because the tarot is my tool. I think it was trying to make it so I was looking beyond, like you're more like you're a channel. It's the thing between, which you can do in different modalities. So then you're not just a tarot reader. It's you can do more, and there's more options for you. And so in that, I heard you need to start a podcast, which is the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And doors have just opened with it. So I've learned to just like, right now I'm just kind of obeying and following the breadcrumbs, but I do feel like I'm supposed to be doing some other modalities, kind of like what you're offering. Cause I love tarot. I don't ever want to stop it because I just love it. But I do feel like they're supposed to be, I don't know if it's going to be mediumship or something else.
I bring in tarot to all the other work I do as well, because tarot and my relationship with tarot is very, very special. It is my one thing that means so much. But to your point, I don't know if it really matters how we access spirit. But I have a question for you. When you get these messages, how do you validate them? How do you know that that's the channeled message and not just like another aspect of you talking you into something? How do you know the difference?
It was the fact that it felt entirely, well, for a couple of things. One, I heard my guide for the first time, which that's coming in and out, but I heard that for the first time last year. And so it's kind of coming to me in that energy, but it was different. I think it was either a different guide or something else, but it was a couple of things. One, this podcast in and of itself has like, I am booked out through July. Like this episode isn't going to drop until end of July or mid-July. And I have 30 more applicants I still haven't even looked at. There's just like all of a sudden there's just an abundance in the that I haven't even tried to get. It's just more like me trying to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And so that to me is very validating. Like, and that the message to change my business name, I changed it from Journey Through Tarot to Spirit Journey Collective. And I feel like there's this like space I didn't have before. And it's allowing me to kind of feel into different things. And not only that, but normally I'm the type of person who like feels like I need to make things happen. And it's so interesting because with my business right now, I'm at this place where I'm just kind of not indifferent. I'm focusing on my podcast. I am advertising, but I kind of feel like there's this, I don't know how to explain it. Like something is morphing. It's in metamorphosis right now. And so I'm trusting that. And I'm not normally the person, I'm impatient and I'm the person who's always like make it happen. And I'm in this space of like, it's coming together. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it's coming together. And then even with my alignment project that I touched on briefly, right around that time I did the automatic writing. I did another automatic writing like a day or two later. I don't remember doing this, but I saved it. Right after I got this idea to do this alignment project, which is kind of like, basically what I did was I came up with actionable steps for each card. And it's this idea of basically being able to give something a little bit more tangible for like what to do next for those that, you know, when you give up, because the readings are so abstract and they're meant to be because the person's supposed to contemplate and do what they need to do with it. But this is more like something more tangible for those that are like, hey, what do I do? You know, I don't know. It's just, it came to me. And so I literally created every single card. I have actionable steps and journal prompts.
Oh, that's nice.
I haven't really done much with it other than that and practicing.
Go get it published. Go get it published. Put a book proposal out.
I feel like I might be teaching it. I don't know. It's still like new. But the crazy thing is, right when I was in the midst of creating this book, I came across that automatic writing that I didn't remember doing, that I totally forgot about it, that talked about this thing called the Alignment Project. And it said, you're going to be doing this thing to help people get more in alignment, to help them feel more fulfilled, all this stuff. And then the last sentence said, but you're not ready for this yet. So you'll know when it's time.
You're like, thanks for that tease. Like, right.
Hilarious that I found it. It was crazy that I found that document right when I was in the middle of writing this book. So it was like, I forgot about it. And then I found it right when I needed to. Like,
oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So I have definitely had that thing to telling me like that it's something higher than me. But the thing is, I have my biggest hurdle is I don't trust myself. So now I'm kind of in this dry spell where I'm like afraid to connect because I'm like, what if that's just my mind? Even though back, you know, a few months ago, I knew it wasn't my mind. Now I'm in the space of like, what if it's just my ego? So I'm definitely learning how to bridge the difference between higher self and ego.
It's a lifelong process. It's a hard process. Like that's what's like the validation part is really important. There was something you said that I thought was really interesting. Oh, what was it? And then I lost it. Like this is my Gemini mind going like ahead of my own mind. Yes. One of the other lessons like I really took to heart after doing a ton of readings is really learning to embrace the liminal space, right? Because we all, like anyone who comes to get a reading, that's the last thing they want. They're like, I don't like this liminal space. It's really uncomfortable. I feel something moving within me. And I often call it like, it's like a spiritual teething where it's like you're like annoyed that you know something's going to erupt, but it hasn't shown up again. And you're just like, nyang, 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 like, oh God, what? And we just want to rush to the to-do list, especially in our Western culture. It's all about, then I do this, then I do this, then I do this, profit. And it's like, no, like sometimes the spiritual messages do less of that. The role is around surrender to the liminal, surrendering to you not being necessarily in control of this, but listening for the synchronicities, signs, and how things show up and knowing when to move at that point and not panicking. I think that's part of it too. So as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, that's so wise. And so few people are taught to do that. And as readers, we see it all the time. And that's another huge takeaway that I've been given in my role as a messenger.
Yeah, that space is extremely uncomfortable. And it's exactly to your point. You know, we have bills to pay, we have things to do. And I mean, thank goodness I do have a day job. It's one that I can work from. It's a gig work. So I can work around it as needed, which is perfect. and it's perfect for my business and everything else. But, it does, when you surrender, that's when things, I've learned this so many times. When you surrender, doors open. It's still extremely hard to surrender, even knowing that, to let go. And so that's kind of the space that I'm in as I'm working on that. And I don't know, are you familiar with human design at all?
I am very familiar. I'm not the biggest fan of it for reasons that would be a whole other thing. Yeah, what are you gonna tell me? What are you?
I'm a projector. And
You're a projector. Okay. Mm-hmm.
but the idea of making space to rest and not be in the hustle and bustle.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at right now, where I'm really trying to listen to that, because that, it resonates, but my anxious, I gotta hustle to make money is like, it's like this war happening inside of me. And so it's like, I'm also trying to learn how to like, okay, lean into the stillness, lean into this idea that I don't have to do all these things to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I'm doing things, but I'm not being in the hustle world, because I'm trying not to be so much in the hustle world. So yeah, it's
projector.
a lot of energy work.
Yeah. And to your point, like I'm a manifester in human design. That's mine.
Oh.
So for me,
I'm not met a manifester yet.
Oh, hi. But I think that's the one thing about human design I think is really interesting, kind of accurate, is that part. But when it gets into the gates, I'm like, because I study I Ching and I'm like, well, that's an interesting take. But as a manifester, my work comes from the manifestation. So it's always grindcore. And the rest is for rest. So for me, the way it works is a little different. Essentially, all tarot readings, I think, truly, truly, truly at their heart come down to this dilemma, which is, I don't want to have to actually change. Please don't make me change, but I want it all to magically change. But if I do change, is it going to be worth it for me though? That is the essential nature of what most people come to tarot for in all these different permutations. And the answer is always yes. It always is. It's never like, no, don't change, stay where you are and like everything will magically change. It's not, because that's not what we're here to do as spirits in human bodies. It's not what we're here to do.
Yeah, it's all about growth and evolution. And I can always tell who's open to that message and who's not when I read for them. Because the ones that aren't open, they're just like, I don't understand. And I'm like, you have to grow, you have to evolve. There's this invitation for change. And and then later on, like you said, I'll hear back later, like, okay, I did, I heard you and I did this and this, and it really opened doors for me. Yeah, it's funny. I had this story that just came to me right now. About a month ago, I did a reading it was the same family that I did another reading previously for. And it was a 16-year-old birthday party. And so the dad set me up on where I was going to be. And I offered him a reading and he's like, no, I'm not interested. Personal preference. And I was like, okay. And there's another gentleman nearby that he said, oh, do you want to get a reading with her? And he goes, no, she gave me a reading last time. Wasn't anything good. I was like,
oh my God.
And then the dad went back inside. But then after the dad went back inside, the guy looked at me, he goes, but you know what? I was in a bad mood that day. And really, all you did was tell me that I needed to get off my ass, which was true because I was just sitting in front of the TV all day. And I started actually kind of getting myself out there and doing different things. And you know what? You're actually pretty right. So it was so funny. I mean, at first I didn't know what to say to that, like,
yeah,
remember you, I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? And then it was, but hearing that, there was something in the reading that provoked him, obviously, because he made some kind of changes and he was able to actually look back and be like, actually, I can see where your reading helped me after he told me it didn't do any good.
I think it's really fascinating. And I think every tarot reader should definitely read up on psychology, because we're not therapists, we're not psychologists per se, but we are interacting with human beings. And so it's really interesting to watch people's defense mechanisms show up in real time if they're triggered. So for me, like I'll ask someone, like I will say like some equivalent, like, yeah, the rose is red. That's what the reading is saying. The rose is red. And then like you'll watch their eyes glaze over immediately. They're not hearing you. And you'll often say, what's going on? They're like, I'm overwhelmed. That means that there's a part of them that's resistant to the message, doesn't want to hear it, and doesn't want to change. So it shows up as a dissociation, and you can watch it in real time as you're giving the session. So you can deploy different techniques to be like, no, 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 don't go away from this, right? And then also, I will say things like, the rose is red. And then they're like nodding, uh-huh. And then I'll go, and I'm sensing there's a defense reaction happening within them. And I'll go, can you bullet point for me what you heard? And they'll go, yeah, I absolutely can. You said that the lily was blue. And I'm like, that is absolutely not what I said. So people, we are wonderful at kidding ourselves, and all humans, we all have it, of like instantly rewriting history and cherry picking what we're hearing. So even though spirit is saying like, I've got this for you, and I've tried to craft this in a way to get it through to you so that you change, we also have the inner saboteur, the inner critic, the inner abuser, who will immediately deploy a countermeasure to keep you from hearing. And so oftentimes people will come to a reading because of an inner conflict. Part of it is their spirit or their higher self going, you're not fucking hearing this. Let's try this. Let's get you there. But then their inner abusive person is like, no, 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 this is bullshit, right? So as readers, we will encounter that kind of stuff. So it's really good to read up on it. I really love IFS, internal family systems, because it's like, oh, look at that. His firefighter has shown up to try to squelch all the truth that this is really hard to hear. So I think you got such a gift from that man that he actually was able to come to you in honesty and be like, actually, I was going through something. That's not common. As a reader, you're going to be hit with all of these reactions. And if you don't have good boundaries and you make it about you, then it'll be like, I suck, like I suck. I'm going to go be an accountant now and like walk and go be an accountant. I don't know. But we have to understand that everybody has free will, but within that free will are all of these complexities that keep people from seeing the light. And we will be the first responders for getting the splashback on that.
Yeah.
So how do we not take it personally? How do we not take it in? This is why, another reason why there's a high burnout rate.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, thankfully, the amount of times that I've gotten negative feedback I think the most negative feedback I got was from hotlines. And I am so grateful for that experience.
I never did that. I was like, oh no.
I would recommend it only because it was like I got in the trenches, and I got in the trenches quick, and I got to kind of like, to your point, of you get to see a lot of people during events. It's the same thing in hotlines. You do get people back to back to back, and they review you, and you're kind of like a product on Amazon, and you can get, and so that part was hard. But it was good. I think it was what I needed to kind of toughen up my skin before I was ready to really read professionally.
Got it.
So I'm grateful for the experiences. I do not want to go back to it.
Well, it's the anxiety drivers, which is I want black and white, and like, please make this okay. Make me feel okay. And so I decided not to do that and decided to go more the festival and party route, because people are far kinder face to face. And so I wanted to be able to engage in their humanity while them also engaging in my humanity, and not just keep it as a transaction. And you're right. You have to be very thick skinned. Like I was like, I'm not thick enough for that. Like, so brava to you, Sarah, like for like, oh God, like, oh, like, it's so scary sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I'm really shifting. Like for the longest time I did 30-minute sessions. I don't do those anymore unless it's a follow-up, because I don't want, the way I want to work is not where I'm the laundry list Zoltar, where it's like, okay, now this, now this, now this, now this, now this, bite. And I'm like, that's not how I want to work, and I don't think that that's how it best works. So I no longer do that. I really do at least hour-long sessions that allows us to really unpack the unfolding message with all the nuance that it deserves to be given.
It's so funny you say that, because I just recently, I was offering 15-minute readings with my business. And I very recently decided that I was just so I do 30 and minutes and hours, but it was the exact same thing. People were trying to come with multiple questions for 15 minutes.
They're trying to shove an hour in 15 minutes. And they're just like crank, crank, crank. And I'm like, go buy yourself an 8-ball, magic 8-ball. Don't come to me with this.
I mean, thankfully, I think, because I tell them in the very beginning, well, I put it on my website too, but I tell them in the very beginning, I see you have a few questions here, but because of our short time, what's the one that you're most interested in? And then maybe we'll get to the other ones.
Mhm.
And so, thankfully I haven't gotten a lot of pushback on that. But yeah, I just recently decided the 15-minute, it's not really enough.
It's
30
not.
minutes, I feel like it's decent for if you have a burning question you want to look at, or you have 2 questions you want to look at. But the hour, like you said, when people ask the difference between 30 minutes and an hour, I'm like, an hour is going to feel like you have unlimited time with me, so we can really dive in. And
Right.
30 minutes is going to feel more constricted, but you're going to have some decent time to ask questions and dive more into things.
Right, right. And really like pull apart often very complex, nuanced situations. Don't you want to invest in enough time to actually like really get the help, or are you just looking for a quick hit? Like, if there's something going wrong with your car, do you really want to take it to the 15-minute oil change place, try to fix it in 15 minutes and slapdash it? Or do you want a good mechanic to really look at the holistic piece of it? So for me, it's about me not wanting to have that experience of just the slot machine of fortunes, but also me feeling like I really want to do my best work by you, and that requires more time. And so it's okay to stand by that, because those 15-minute ones are very exhausting, because they are trying to compress everything in 15 minutes. In my experience with the 30 minutes, what I was getting were clients that would only ever sign up for the 30 minutes to do the quick hit. Should I hire this handyman or that handyman kind of stuff? That's not where my interest is. So there are other readers on their journey, and that used to be part of my journey, but it's not anymore. And that's my own growth. So, I mean, I could literally do 2 hours with people, 90 minutes, 2 hours. And yeah. And often I'll be like, listen, we do not have enough time to unpack this, or I can't determine the situation that you're bringing to me can be tidied in this amount of time. It may require like more to look at. And so we'll book another time. We'll book more time, you know? So Sarah, I would say to you, go ahead and kill it.
I already did.
Yay! Congratulations.
Felt like the right thing to do. It felt like it's time to let this go. And so it just felt good. And so I went with it. So that's part of kind of like what I told you. I feel like I'm in this metamorphosis state.
Mhm.
And so funny, because by the time this airs, I might be out of the other side, I might already be, so it's kind of funny if someone's like looking at my website now, it may be totally different than how it exists now, but it's definitely right now. And we're recording in April. I feel like I'm in this metamorphosis state, and I'm just leaning into it the best I can, So from here, because I feel like we could talk.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a hard stop here soon. So I think no matter what, if I can give you put my business hat on and give you some advice, no matter what you do, don't get away from this question, which is, what are people paying you to solve? What problem are you solving? If you get away from that, you've gotten away from everything.
Yeah.
So if there's this idea of like, I want to do this ascension, or is that what you were talking about? Ascension process, right?
Yeah. Like when I'm doing the project I'm working on, or
Yeah. So you're like, I'm excited by that, but how can you say this will solve this problem in 10 seconds or less? If you can't do that, then your message isn't tight enough.
I'm trying to figure out how to word it. So that's really good advice.
Because what's good, what's exciting to us, like, and go, oh, I want to do this, so cool. But unless we're communicating its value in terms of this is the problem it's going to solve for you, people will not sign up because, you know, I mean, think about it. Like, I go to, oh, I've got a leak. I go see a plumber. Plumber's like, yeah, I can solve that problem. I have a cavity. I go see a dentist. So what problem are you solving? And that doesn't mean it has to be that tangible, but you have to be clear on what is the problem. Is the problem disconnection? Is the problem there's no meaningfulness in my life? Is the problem I'm not connected to my purpose, right? Think about what is the problem that you and the work about you at your best, what is that solving? How are you serving the world?
Yeah.
And keep it tight to that. Keep it tight. The moment you get away from that, you lose it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Makes you kind of want to reach out to the people I've done that, practice that alignment project on and ask them, what did this do for you? To just kind of really, I know what I want it to do. And I know that it really helped them, but now, and, kind of get what I think and what their experience and.
Yeah, that's great. Ask them, what problem did this solve? Because
Yeah.
people are always asking this question, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
What's in it for me? And that's not a bad question. We're all busy. We're all being bombarded, with so much stuff. So we're always going through our newsletters. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? As long as you keep that, this is what's in it for you. This is how I'm adding value to you. This is how I'm solving a problem. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, I love that. Well, from here, I'd love to just shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. It's one of my favorite segments. And it's really just, I mean, and I know we kind of shared some fun ones anyways, just on our own, but do you have any synchronicity stories that you could share that really just let you know, either from the universe, you were right where you're supposed to be, or some kind of fun, paranormal, positive story that you can't explain? Do you have anything like that you could share?
Well, in terms of synchronicities, like in terms of like being a tarot reader, I think it was very similar to what you were saying earlier that like, okay, I've got the worst luck in the world. I always have. I have terrible luck. Like if it's going to happen, it'll probably happen to me. Like I've always had this just Murphy's Law, bad luck kind of thing. I don't know why. But when I started my business in tarot, it was insane how I just kept getting lucky. And it was like green light, green light, green light, right place, right time, right place, right time, right place, right time. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? Like, I don't trust this. What's happening? Right. So I would say that when I get into that state of flow of like green light, right place, right time, I'm like, okay, cool, 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 cool. I'm listening and I'm paddling in the same direction that the waves are going. So there's that piece. But in terms of general metaphysical stories, I have a good one for you. I'm going to be interviewing Melanie Barnum. She recently had a book that came out by Llewellyn for intuition, and she'd asked me to share a story. And the story I shared with her was a few years ago, I had a dream that my mother-in-law went to the hospital and died. And I didn't want to tell my husband. I didn't want to upset him. So I didn't really say anything. And then I thought about it, and the next day I told him. The next day after that, we hear from his sister, and his mom is in the hospital. There was some infection. They gave her some meds, and then they sent her home. And based off of my dream, we pushed very hard. No, go back. It doesn't feel like they really have done enough work to figure out what's going on. And it was right. They found a hidden secondary infection. She had to stay and get IV antibiotics. She could have that dream could have gone true. But knowing what I know about the Ghost of Christmas Future, I really was like, nope, she's got to go back. She's got to go back. And so half the battle with intuition is trusting it, right? And not discounting ourselves. And that's easier said than done. But always look for validation. Where's the validation? Where am I getting validation? And mediumship makes that very easy in a way that tarot doesn't, right? Because tarot, that validation may not come for another year or a year and a half, or they didn't say what the reading said they should have done, therefore the prediction was wrong, right? But with mediumship, the validation is usually pretty fast. It's either immediate or soon after. And so from mediumship and the feeling of what does validated information feel like as it's coming through, how then can I translate that into readings and trust that even if I can't get that validation, it feels similar to the times I could, and I can extrapolate from that.
That's a really cool story though. I mean, I can't imagine. Do you get dreams like that often? Is that something that's part of your gift, or was that just something that you don't normally receive, but received it and thought, oh, I need to listen to this?
Yeah, I normally don't. Like, that's not my main way. So, but when it does, I know to listen. Yeah. Yeah, that's not usually my main way, because I typically am not walking around with my feelers out. I'm shut down unless I'm typically in session. Unless there is, and what I call like an emergent property. It's like a siren that's like, no, 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 pay attention to this. And then I go, oh, okay. But normally I'm not. I'm not walking around like Teresa Caputo, like, oh, your aunt, like at the deli counter. Like, that's so rude. Like, I'm all about consent. Like, I'm not going to be looking typically, unless I have consent to look. And
Yeah.
because why would I? Like, people are always like, oh, what do you see about me? I'm like, that you're blonde? I don't know. Like, I'm not looking. And maybe I don't want to. Like, I'm off the clock. I'm relaxing, you know? But sometimes I'll get that where it's like, and I'm sure you've had it too, right? Where it feels like something's just hit you over the head. And there's almost like this compulsion to say something.
Oh, here and there. It's been more like for me, because like I said, I'm very new to the channeling thing. So it's more like I'll get a word that like in the middle of the reading, it just keeps coming up over and over and over until I finally am like, I don't know why, but I keep hearing this word. And then they're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I hear what I've heard from you is that you have a lot of like clairaudience, like you hear a lot. It sounds like you get a lot of voices.
I don't know if it's audience. It's like in my mind. So it's hard to explain.
But
When I say
that's
hear,
it too. But is it your voice in your mind or is it another voice in your mind?
you know what? I'm gonna have to answer that question the next time because like that's I think that's why I struggle with like right now when I'm in this space where I'm not necessarily getting as much validation. I'm just kind of in this metamorphosis state or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's like I don't really remember what it felt like when I knew it wasn't me.
Mhm.
And when I've done that in a more recent reading where I did get that word over and over and it landed, like I
Mhm.
can't really tell you what that felt like. Like I just knew it wasn't me. And
Yeah.
so I think that I need to get more clear. Like the next time that happens, I need to like really be like, okay, like this is what it feels like, because it's like a feeling, but it's like a word or
Mhm.
so I don't know if it's necessarily like I'm hearing it.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's hard to explain. It is kind of like my voice, but not. I know it's not from me. I'm
Mhm.
still. I just recently started reading this book it was recommended to me by another reader that I interviewed a couple days ago who's been doing this for like 40 years. And it's called Open to Channeling.
Oh
And
yeah, open to channel. That's like the quintessential Bible that started it all. And it's really, channeling is having a new moment right now. Like tarot had a moment. Yeah, I have that exact same one. Actually, it's so funny you mentioned that because I let a client borrow it, and I just emailed her today because I was like, hey, yo, you gonna mail that back to me? I want my book back. So that's so funny, but it's the exact same one. I feel like the tarot heyday, like everything is cyclical. Tarot really had a moment, and that's crusted. And now we're seeing human design and channeling more, and a little bit of mediumship. Mediumship's hard to pull off unless you really, really are psychic or you've really worked hard, because they can instantly validate, right? Unlike, oh, your Akashic records, you were meant to um be a cowgirl and go to Montana in your past life. You were in Africa. Like, you can't validate any of that. How would you know? That's easy. But things that can be immediately validated, that's the work. It's not sexy, but that's the work. And so mediumship requires that. But what I'm hearing is, and sensing is, yeah, you've definitely got the skill for it specifically. I think it'd be a really good fit for you.
Thank you. I'm just starting the book, so I feel like I do feel called to, I have to really connect with, I keep hearing slow down because I'm always, it's so funny. I'm a projector, but I'm totally anxious, go, go, go energy. And I've been feeling it for a while. Stop and slow down. And I kind of am getting scared because I'm like, if I don't stop, I might get forced to stop. So I should really,
True. Yes.
I don't want something to force me to stop. So I'm trying to change my routines and make space to just be and bridge that connection because I know it's there. I've had enough validation around it to know that it's there.
Mhm.
I just don't know how to plug into it. Just, you know what I mean? So anyways,
You will. You'll get there.
thank
You'll
you.
get there.
So my final question that I like to ask everyone is,
Mhm.
do you believe that we all have a purpose and a mission here?
I think we have many purposes and many missions. I don't think there's just one. And I think that they can change because the universe is endlessly creative and endlessly regenerative, and spirit finds a way, life finds a way. So I think it's always this conversation with the universe. So it's like, well, I think this is my purpose. But maybe it isn't. And the universe is like, all right, okay, we'll scratch that out and put a new purpose. I think that it's more loosey-goosey than that. And I think the universe is not punitive. That has come through so clearly. So let's say that we decided to come down, incarnate, and we're like, yo, I have these lessons that I really need to nail down in this lifetime. You don't get punished if that didn't happen. There's no punishment. But it's like, I guess you'll have to keep repeating it until you get it. Or there may be another purpose we can tackle. So I'm really against any kind of do or die black and white thinking. To me, it's about, am I being purposeful? Am I serving the world? Am I trying to leave the world better than I found it? And who am I at my best? When I'm in a state of flow, when I am like all my strengths are like firing on all cylinders, and all my weaknesses like math, algebra, like all that crap is like I don't have to do that. And that I'm in a place of service and it pays the bills, then that's good until the next time. Because if we think that we have many, many incarnations and that time is not a line, but a cycle, then there is no need for this do or die approach. And that's how I see it.
I really love that answer. I love that living purposefully and mindfully. I love that aspect too. So the way that I like to define purpose is I think that it's when you do what lights you up, like, so when you're in alignment, when you're in your flow, when
Yep.
you're in your, when you're doing what lights you up, but what you're doing serves the humanity in the world in some way. And so I feel like if that's my definition of it. And I feel like you, to your point, that can show up in so many different ways. And it can evolve. Like right now, I feel like I'm evolving from, the tarot to that and something more, but I think the underlying purpose that I like that I feel like is part of my path is really shedding a light on what people need to hear and see in that guide. But I also feel like purpose could also be just being here to experience life, right? So I think that there's so it's not this grandiose one big thing. It's multiple things combined, and it's, be open to it changing and evolving and shifting, because that's also too. So I love that answer.
Like we are constantly in a conversation with the source. It's not like that happened before we were born and then we don't have another conversation until we die. And then there's this like punitive accounting, like, whoa, oh. I don't, when I see the source in action, when I look in the world, I am just overwhelmed by how creative and endlessly regenerative. I know I keep saying those words, but it's true. So when people come, because that's the question I get a lot, what's my purpose? And it's just like, that's not the right question. Or who's my soulmate? That's also not the quite right question, because soulmate would indicate only one. And I think we're soul connected. I think you have people that you're soul connected, But this idea that if you missed the boat with that one, then you're what? Like the universe, like, oh, she needs to get 10 more cats. She's just like, nope, not for her. Mm-mm. Like there's none of that. It just isn't. It just isn't like that.
Yeah.
And I'm really maybe numinous, nature oriented. Like even birds that like they pair bond for life, right? Like that's it. When one dies, they get another. Like there's always a redemption arc. Always. That's all it is.
Yeah, I love that. And same here. When they ask those kinds of questions, I always try to redirect because it's not that black and white. And even when if I feel like someone's coming in, I never say, oh, that's the one. That's a person you're gonna connect with, and it might turn into something, but yeah.
Or it's just a journey to love. So that one isn't the one, but you're being taught some really important lessons by being with that one that will take you closer to a connection, right? I'm a very odd new age person, I think. Like I've always been anti-dogmatic. When I start to see like this is the way this is, I have this natural rebellion towards it. That
Yeah.
was true from Christianity when I was a kid. And I was like, this, like my family, like real quick, and then we got to go. But I was secular, but like we became Christian when my dad got sober, right? It was always like around, like he traded beer for Jesus or evangelical, whatever. And I just remember thinking at like 11 or 12, like, what? Like, all I'm hearing is no, 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 no. But when I go out into nature, all I see and hear is yes, yes, yes. I can't square these two things. They don't make sense to me. And I want to be in the energy that says yes.
I'm very similar. I can't fit into a box. My beliefs. That's one thing I learned after I broke away from Christianity. I tried to be Wiccan, and to me, it was just the other extreme. And I've tried other religions, and I'm just like, it didn't fit. And I think it's because of the dogmatic. You're in a box, and so my beliefs now are they're all right. We're all right. We're all one.
My religion is we're all right. Yes. That's great. I love that.
So yeah, how can our listeners find you if they want a reading with you or read your books or, work with you?
Yeah, everything begins with my name, Jenna Matlin. So you can get my books Llewellyn or Amazon. My website is of this name. I don't have anything currently up in terms of classes and offerings. I need to do that soon. I will be presenting tarot and mediumship. I don't know where you are, at Mystic South in Atlanta in July.
Oh, okay. I'm in California.
Oh, you're in California. For some reason, I thought you were East Coaster. Oh, I'm from California originally, but it's been a long time. I'm also on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I am intermittently active on these things. My newsletter is probably the most consistent way to kind of get to know me and to have a reading. I do readings every 2 weeks for my people, and I also do little mini tarot lessons. So that's every 2 weeks, and that's consistent on my newsletter. And I'll be working on another book soon. I've got to get this book proposal out, and people feel called to have a reading, come. If people call to want to learn deeper with me, come. If they want to work on business stuff with me, bring it, and we will get into it together. So thank you. And thank you for having me so much. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, perfect. Oh my gosh. So first of all, I will put all that in the show notes. So listeners, you can find her, just look at the show notes and connect with her easy. And yes, I'm just so honored. I was so excited when I saw you were in the group. It was so funny because I didn't even realize that you were the author until you responded with, oh, well, I wrote the book. And I was like, wait, hold up.
I think someone tagged me because I'm not normally hanging out in groups, like I'm busy doing readings all the time. I don't have a lot of time. So someone tagged me, and then I was like, oh, yeah, that was mine.
I'm really excited because it was such a profound, helpful book for me that I was like, I have to talk to you. I have to get you on. I'm so
Aw.
excited.
And it's
Yes.
so kind of you to have me on, especially as you're moving into these other spheres. But it'll be exciting to see what you do and how you serve the world, for sure.
Well, you were part of my journey. So thank you.
Aw, that means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.